The letter came on a Tuesday, wrapped in a thick cream envelope and addressed in looping, elegant handwriting I didn't recognize. Outside, rain dragged long shadows across the windows of our crumbling apartment. Inside, it smelled like damp socks and yesterday's dinner. Lily sat at the kitchen table, coloring with the last broken crayons we owned, her tongue poking out in concentration. I slit the envelope open, bracing for another overdue notice or a fast food coupon. But instead, a legal letterhead stared back at me. A name followed, Agatha Vance. The name stirred a half-buried memory, something whispered in hushed tones long ago. A distant relative on my mother's side, part of the family that had cut us off cold when my mother married my father. My mother had never talked about them much, only hinted at a wound that never healed. And Agatha? She had been the one cloaked in mystery, the spinster aunt who'd never left the family home, the one they said saw things that weren't there. According to the letter, she was dead, and I was her sole heir. There was a house, a sizable estate, and one very specific condition: live there continuously for 1 year. If I left for more than a couple days, the property would be surrendered to the local heritage trust. I didn't think of legacy or blood ties. I thought of Lily, of scraped-together dinners, of nights I left her in daycare too long while I scrubbed toilets and smiled at rude customers for tips. Every month was survival. This house wasn't just an old structure. It was a lifeline, a roof that was truly ours, land to breathe on, a future that didn't smell like bleach and despair. I forced a bright smile. We're going on a little trip, Bug. Her eyes lit up. We packed fast, just 2 suitcases and a box of memories. Everything else we left behind. The drive took hours, the landscape growing lonelier with every mile. The town we arrived in was little more than a name on a map, the kind of place where time forgot to keep up. The house lay beyond it, down a dirt road that seemed to swallow the car. And then we saw it. Not picturesque, not quaint. It rose like a warning from the earth. Dark timbers, blackened shingles, and windows that stared back like hollow eyes. Ivy strangled the porch. Trees pressed in close, as if trying to erase it. The air smelled of wet pine and something deeper, like rusted iron and rotting petals. I stepped inside first. The moment I crossed the threshold, the air thickened. Not just cold, but wrong. Heavy. Breathing was like sucking air through cloth. Light from the open door cut through dust that churned like fog. The scent was a sour mix of dampness, metal, and something sweet and sickly. Lily clung to my side. "It's dark, Mama," she said in a whisper. "It just needs the lights on." I lied, flipping a dead switch. There was no power. We spent that night in sleeping bags on the living room floor, wrapped in coats in silence. The house groaned like it remembered us. Floorboards creaked beneath unseen footsteps. The wind found ways in, whistling through cracks. But underneath it all was a sound I couldn't explain. A slow, deliberate scratch, faint but constant, like something dragging nails across stone. I told myself it was mice. In the morning, I got to work. First on Lily's room, scrubbing floors, airing sheets, tearing down curtains that smelled like they hadn't moved in decades. I gave her the room with the biggest window, hoping light could chase away whatever lingered in the shadows. But nothing about this house cleaned up easy. Every object seemed placed, arranged not for use, but with intent. Odd clusters of items, candlesticks, broken mirrors, dried flowers, were grouped like offerings or markers. Felt like stepping into someone's unfinished ritual. The basement was worse. The root cellar was damp and earthy, but the air there carried that same strange sweetness. Symbols were chalked onto the stone. Faded, geometric, wrong. Not quite occult, not quite mathematical. Just off. Upstairs, I found a study. Shelves held books that didn't belong to this world. Tomes on forgotten sciences. Star charts. Hand-drawn blueprints of machines that couldn't work. It wasn't a collection. It was an obsession. The room buzzed with something, energy maybe. Standing in its center made the light shift ever so slightly. A high-tone whined just out of hearing. It made my vision swim. The scratching returned. Only now it wasn't random. It followed a pattern. From Lily's walls, from under her bed. Tap, 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 pause. First, she asked about it. Then she didn't. "They're my quiet friends," she said one day, tracing invisible shapes in the air. She would giggle at nothing, smile at corners, watch things move above her bed that I couldn't see. Her laughter was soft and strange in the stillness of the house. Something had noticed us, and it had found Lily first. The afternoon sun filtered weakly through the grimy windows, casting long, thin shadows across the living room. Lily sat cross-legged on the rug, surrounded by her dolls, her voice lilting in a soft, one-sided conversation. I was nearby, curled in a creaking armchair with one of Agatha's thinner books, trying to read through the tangle of dated vocabulary and incoherent theories. My mind kept drifting, and my eyes kept returning to Lily. She giggled suddenly. "Mommy, look, the quiet friend is playing too." I looked up. Her dolls, which had been scattered haphazardly across the rug, now sat arranged in a perfect ring. In the center of the circle was a smooth, gray stone, small, round, and completely out of place. The dolls were turned inward, as though watching it. My blood ran cold. I hadn't heard Lily move them. I hadn't seen her leave the room, and I definitely hadn't seen that stone before. I stood, my knees unsteady, and crossed the room. "Let's go play in the kitchen, sweetheart," I said gently, reaching for her. She barely noticed the tension in my voice. "But he likes my dolls," she beamed. I scooped her up, clutching her to my chest. As I backed toward the hallway, one of the dolls tipped over slowly. Not from gravity, not from air. It fell like a hand had pushed it. Its glass eyes stared at the ceiling. The others remained still, encircling the stone like guardians. I didn't dare look back as we fled the room. I didn't want to see if the doll had moved again. That night, the tapping returned, but it was different. No longer faint or sporadic, it struck the wall behind our heads in a deliberate, aggressive rhythm. Rap, 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 like a fist knocking from the other side of reality. I curled myself tighter around Lily, trying to shield her with my body, trying to silence the dread with the warmth of her small limbs. But the sound vibrated through the floorboards, through the mattress, into my bones. The house was no longer just unsettling. It was watching. In the days that followed, reality began to slip. The hallway grew longer, stretching like taffy beneath my feet. What should have been 10 steps became 20. The doors moved too. One I swore I'd shut would yawn open again, black and cold and whispering. The very air would change. Suddenly thick, then thinning, choking me just long enough to leave me gasping. Lily began setting up tea parties for the quiet friends. Sometimes she'd leave out toys or snacks. Once I found a small pile of bread crusts on a porcelain plate, carefully placed at the base of a chair. She'd begun to draw, too. Not stick figures, not houses or trees, but spirals, webs of lines, strange diagrams in crayon that mirrored the same obscure glyphs I'd seen scrawled in chalk on the cellar walls. I recognized them even if I didn't understand them. "They taught me," she'd say when I asked. "Who did, baby?" She would only smile, her eyes glazed, as if the question itself was silly. One afternoon, I was hanging a photo of us. A moment of laughter caught on a rare beach day. I faced the wall, hammer in hand, trying to place it straight. Then the air behind me froze. Not cold, still. The dust hung in place like snow suspended in time. My skin prickled. My breath caught. I didn't hear footsteps, but I felt it. Presence directly behind me. Not beside, not near, behind. Inches away. Watching. Waiting. My hand trembled. Every part of me screamed not to turn around. I couldn't. The silence dragged on, heavy as stone, until the pressure suddenly lifted. I gasped, staggered, and dropped the hammer. It clattered to the floor, loud in the unbearable quiet. I didn't pick it up. Nights grew darker even when I left lamps on. It wasn't just the absence of light. It was the presence of something else. I could feel eyes in the blackness. Not two, dozens, hundreds, all fixed on me. When I closed my eyes, I didn't find rest. I saw impossible things. Shapes that bent in unnatural ways, flickers of colors that had no names, angles that twisted my stomach. My dreams were no longer mine. They pulsed with ancient rhythms and voices I couldn't understand, murmuring just beneath the edge of sleep. The walls sighed at night, as if the house itself was exhaling. And when the wind pressed against the windows, it sounded too human. Like sorrow, like mourning. The smell changed too. What was once faint and metallic was now strong and cloying. Like iron and wilted lilies. It seeped into the wallpaper, into our clothes. Sometimes, it came with a sound. A high, whining hum that settled deep in my skull and wouldn't let go. One morning, I awoke to find Lily standing at the bedroom door, her tiny fingers stretched toward the knob. She wasn't moving, just staring into the hallway. "What is it, baby?" I whispered, rising slowly. She didn't answer. Then I heard it. A low, grinding noise, like wet stone dragging across wet stone, echoed from the darkness beyond the doorframe. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't the house. It was moving. Something massive. Something just beyond the light. And Lily? She didn't look afraid. She looked ready. The cold hit me first. A flash of ice in my bloodstream as the doorknob began to turn. Not a jolt. Not sudden. Slow. Purposeful. I lunged, wrapping Lily in my arms and pulling her back against me. We watched as the knob stilled. Then came the tapping. Tap, 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 tap. I knew that rhythm. From the walls. From the nights. From the thing that watched. We backed away until the wall kissed my spine. My heartbeat a frantic tattoo. Nothing moved. Nothing came. Just silence. And then, a faint scraping sound, dragging down the hallway, fading into the dark. I had to leave. I had to get Lily out. The thought was so urgent it snapped me out of my paralysis like a slap. My legs trembled beneath me, but they moved. I lifted Lily, clutching her close, and ran. Down the stairs. The house groaned louder than ever. The wood beneath each step protesting as though trying to hold us back. The air grew thicker with each breath, heavy, syrupy, stained with that same sharp, sweet scent of metal and decay. The front door stood ahead like salvation. I reached for it, my hand already shaking before it met the brass handle. Cold. Too cold. I twisted. It didn't move. Again. Harder. Nothing. I threw my shoulder into it. The frame didn't budge. The door might as well have been carved from stone. I pounded, screamed, kicked, but the house remained mute, unmoved. I turned, wild-eyed, scanning the room. Windows. We'd try the windows, but they were sealed, painted shut, warped, stubborn as bone. My fingernails chipped against the edges as I clawed and pulled. Nothing. Not a crack. Not a hint of give. The house wasn't just keeping us in. It was closing around us. A weight settled on the air, heavier than before. Not just pressure. Not just presence. It was a gaze. Something was watching, closer now, closer than ever. I felt it from the shadows, from behind the walls, from beneath the floorboards. A gaze that wasn't curious anymore. It was claiming. And the walls, they were breathing. Subtle, yes, but I could feel it now. The floor pulsed beneath my feet. The walls drew in and out, a slow contraction and release like lungs. The house inhaled us. The house held us. And I could feel it in my own chest, choking the air from my lungs. Then came the hum. Low, deep, wrong. It vibrated up from the foundation, through the soles of my feet, into my bones. My teeth ached. My stomach turned. The pitch wasn't meant for human ears. It was deeper, ancient. It spoke to something primitive inside me and said one thing. You belong to me. Lily stirred. Mommy? What's that noise? Shoo! It's nothing, I whispered. But even I could hear the lie. The smell thickened. It poured in through my mouth and nose, coating my tongue, tasting like rust and rot and something sweet that had turned long ago. The shadows twisted. They didn't just fall anymore. They moved, crawled, shifted like smoke with purpose, detaching from the corners and stretching out toward us. I backed into the center of the room, clutching Lily, my only thought, protect her, but the house wouldn't allow it. The tapping stopped. The scraping faded. Everything went still. A silence deeper than death fell. So loud it screamed behind my ears. My eardrums ached. Lily's hand clutched my shirt. Her eyes were wide, locked on something behind me that I couldn't see. Then her gaze softened. Her grip loosened. Her eyelids fluttered, and she slumped in my arms, limp, unconscious. Lily! I dropped to my knees, laying her gently down on the floor. She was breathing, but she wasn't there. Her mind had been taken, and I was alone. The room warped. The floor bowed. The ceiling stretched. The angles twisted into geometries that made no sense. The shadows took shape, vague, formless masses that pulsed with an energy I couldn't describe. The pressure in my skull spiked until I thought it would burst. And then, it spoke. Not with sound, not with voice, with understanding. A message poured into my mind. Not in words, but in concepts. It showed me the house, not as a structure, but a nexus, a knot tied through time and space. It showed me Agatha, not mad, but assigned. She was a keeper, custodian, a guardian of this anchor. And now it wanted me. It had seen my desperation, my need, my love, and it offered me a pact. Security for Lily, shelter, a future. In exchange, I would keep the house. I would maintain the anchor. I would allow the presence to remain. This was no ordinary haunting. This was a cosmic deal, an ancient force, indifferent but bound by old agreements. It needed a bridge, a bloodline, and I was next in line. Terror flooded me so sharp it nearly drowned out the logic. I wanted to run. I wanted to scream, but Lily lay on the rug, small and still, her breath shallow. I looked to the invisible presence hovering above her. In my heart, I made a silent demand. Not her. Let her be a child. Let her grow. Let it be me, until it's her time. The presence shifted. An acknowledgement. No words. No emotion. Just an immense, alien consideration. Then it agreed. The weight shifted. The attention lifted from Lily and turned to me. The decision was mine. No contract. No blood right. Just an understanding. I had to accept. Not with words, but willingly. And so I did. I let it in. I became the anchor. The shadows retreated. The walls stilled. The hum faded. And Lily stirred. She sleeps now, peaceful, her cheeks flushed with warmth. The house is quiet. The silence is final. The tapping has stopped. The movement in the walls is gone. But I know what it cost. We are no longer just tenants. We are keepers. The house is ours now, safe, permanent. But it came at a price higher than fear, higher than blood. It came with a future sealed not by locks, but by something far more ancient. And I will never forget. This was not a rescue. This was a trade.